either, but one water does need some money, so it's necessary. So if we're going to try and save some money, and I would urge council to try and look for savings. Where do we find those savings? It's in the nice things, the things that we'd like to have, but maybe we don't actually need them. So I had a quick scan through the infrastructure list on page 37 of the plan. Lists all the things that infrastructure is going to be spent. I had a look down at it and thought, if I had the power to change this, and okay, I admit we did consultation 3 years ago, so these are already approved. But personally, I would look at the hydrotherapy pool and say, does it need to happen within this 10 years? Can it push back the 2035 plan? Do we need it? Have we got enough money to pay for it now? Can we look at savings in other areas? Rural roads. I'm sure some of them are really important. Might be other ones that are slightly less important. So can they be put on the back burner, delayed a little bit? We've got 3 roundabouts that need traffic lights. Okay, can we fix 1 traffic light and do the other 2 later? Don't know. Curbside recycling. That's hugely expensive. Is it going to give us value for money? Yes, central government wants it, but my view is, unless we absolutely have to do it, it would be a prime candidate for doing it later, or maybe not at all. And also cost blowouts. So if we go back to the 2021 documents, I think the Maidstone turf was $7 million to fix it. The 2024 document, it's $15 million to fix it. And other items as well in expenditure lists. So the cost of parks and reserves, if we look at 2021 numbers, might be $3 or $4 million a year. 2027, 2028, it's $8 or $9 million a year. So we've suddenly gone for some big increases in some items. Now I know we have inflation, building costs, whatever, but when you actually look at how the numbers have changed, the numbers seem to have got very big very quickly. So I think it's council's job to look at these numbers and ask the question why, and say, okay, what can we actually do to bring some of these numbers down a little bit and actually make sure that we're looking after the pockets of the ratepayers in Upper Hutt. And I know it's nice to do stuff, make things better, spend money, do things, but at this point in time, maybe it's a case of just scaling back, understanding the money that we have, and just being a little bit more careful and prudent with the spending plans. And I've got a question of financial advice the council is given. You have professionals here advising. Shouldn't they have been saying, okay, guys, can't we just turn this back a bit? Can you really go to ratepayers and give a 65% increase in 3 years? And my final point is for every councillor here, if you put in your election leaflet last year, vote for me, and I recommend a 65% rate increase over 3 years. Do you think that would have affected the number of votes you would have got? Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Any questions? Councillor Carson?
Yeah, thanks for coming along. Are you aware that deferring or cancelling any projects after year 3 has no impact on the first 3-year rate increases?
I'm aware of that, but of course, the 10-year picture still has value in my opinion.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Anthony? No? Well, Councillor Carson, Councillor Swales?
Thanks very much for coming along, but this is a draft document and everything is up for grabs. I just want to assure you that even though we did look at putting some things in 2021, 2031, they're not set in concrete. So it is a draft document. So all of the things that you said, I'm sure that we will take into mind and consideration. So thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, we haven't got any but laws. So is Mary Beth Pale or Tony Chair here?
They're right out there.
It's in the loop.
Oh, Tony is.
Yeah, it's in the loop. But it's drying his hands.
Okay, we now move to submit our Mary Beth Taylor, which is number
415, your worship.
415 on page 138. So, Mary Beth, would you like to come forward? You either stand or you can sit.
Yes.
I wish I had
Oh,
wish I had a couple of minutes to catch my breath, actually. Yeah. So Mary Beth Taylor, your friendly environmental advocate. Here, put together some pictures for you. So I know Helen likes that. So now this. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you know, with the community center, this is quite a heartless piece, this current version of a long-term plan you put forward as a draft. So it's quite punishing. You've read my submission, my written submission, so I won't go over the first page because that's just saying it as it is. But after that, what I'm going to show you today is quite different. Okay. Where am I shooting us to? All right. Okay. Yeah, I just want to go back a minute, make sure I'm okay. So I just had to run from countdown, so I got some water. So when I'm looking at the long-term plan as it stands here, the well-beings and the community outcomes are really not evident, except for infrastructure, which is well behind. We won't even talk about that. So it's quite a punishing thing, and it's sort of taking the heart out of the community when you're withdrawing so much money for their events and projects and whatnot, and culturally, and especially environmentally, withdrawing from the sustainability strategy. So I'm concerned that the well-beings and the community outcomes are not evident. And I think that local government might have something to say about that, but I think you need to go back and see if you can put some heart back into this, okay? And part of that would be to take longer time to try to balance the books. It took a long time of super low rates for probably the wrong reason to get to this point. And I think it's going to take quite a while to get out of it. And I don't think we need to beat our community up too madly to get there. So, and as we're going through trying to balance the books and trying to repair infrastructure and get things sorted, I would like to see you continue to make some progress on sustainable infrastructure along the way, because in the long term, that's going to save the community and the environment money. You can't turn your back on the environment. You do that at your own peril. It's a lot easier to look after the environment with good policy now and along the way, as we're paying down debt, than to recover the environment in the end. You know, we're on a water crisis, energy crisis, a biodiversity crisis. You can't turn your back on that. So a sustainability focused long-term plan, I mean, there's still people that believe that climate change is a hoax, that humans have nothing to do with it. But in the meantime, let's just tick off a few of these things on that whiteboard. And even if maybe it's not 100% true, at least we're making a better city along the way. And we can do all of those things. We can make a livable city, clean water, air. We can protect and enhance our local environment. So we talk about visions, we talk about goals, we talk about associated action through the plans and policies that you guys put forward. And I know you don't get nearly enough input from the community. You really don't. I want more people to stand up and engage with this democracy. I'm working on that in another stream, but our vision statement for the sustainability strategy is up there. That we are a resilient and adaptable city that identifies, confronts, and finds solutions to issues impacting on our four well-beings, and they're not even evident in this long-term plan, to ensure future generations can live a good life here. This is what we all want. We all need to be on the same page working towards this. And those are the goals aligned with the sustainability strategy that could feed into the long-term plan. So water action, that's the big thing on the table, is water. This stuff here. So reticulated water, this quality, and the stuff that comes out of your pipes, it really should be used only for drinking, for cooking and personal hygiene. And there's a way to plan, to make changes, to have that happen. I've lived that way my whole life. And until you do live that way, you don't understand the joy and the thrift and the absolute amazement of being able to live that way. Okay? It's just been my whole life. Whether I was raised on well water, whether I was sailing around the world, or whether I'm collecting water now, storm water, that's how I live. Okay, so you need to hear more stories about that and figure out ways you can encourage and support more people to manage their water that way. So tank storage, untreated stormwater, which is not this. This should only be for toilet flushing, clothes washing, and gardening. And H2O extreme, we got to figure out a way we can put some stormwater into that pool too, because that water is treated on site with chlorine. You don't need chlorinated water for that. So these are things you can put your heads together. You can figure it out. You've got a good team there. And the flow-on effects from the water actions, you take pressure off the river. We all want to do that. We take pressure off of having to build immediately more storage lakes. The aquifers, the one at Petone, if you've been listening to Wellington Water, a little bit more sea level rise and you're getting backwash of seawater. That means that aquifer is off the table forever permanently. It'll never be clear water again. So you've got to take pressure off. And I think empowering the community, water meters to measure so they know the data, a water tank to capture and store water. All buildings have gutters. All buildings can collect water. So the result will be lower cost to the community and the environment. Just have to figure out ways to do that. Fastest 5 minutes I've ever known. Energy actions. We need to grow renewable generation and storage. Okay, and that means a lot of PV installations that should be on all council-owned assets. Hot water heating on H2O extreme to boost the hot water. Wind farms on suitable sites. A solar farm on the Mongrel peatland. I put this forward several times. And we can incentivize the community to do renewable energy prediction. Well, I read today that 30% globally, 30% of the electricity generated globally comes from renewables now, as of 2023. This is so doable. I just wonder why this council is always so resistant to trying something new. This is a very good 2-minute clip, and I really want you to see this because this is where the rest of the world is going. I'm not sure how we can get that up there. It's only a little bit less than 2 minutes. Can we watch that?
You don't need to put that up.
Well,
2 minutes.
if you want questions, the time will be
2
up.
minutes, because
No,
this is.
if you
what
want
we're
questions,
thinking.
otherwise there won't be any questions.
Can you email me questions?
Yeah.
Do you want to watch this 2-minute? Yep.
Yeah.
This is where the world is going. This is what Mongrel Farms wants to do. And you'll have to skip, you'll have to skip the ads and whatnot.
Yeah.
Big screen? South Island for us. I can't get out of this, you have to. Yeah, I wanted you to see that to inspire you. Because again, this is how I live. When the grid is down, it doesn't affect us at all. Everything functions perfectly, computers, a whole lot. I want you to be inspired to start working on something like this, okay? So it's cost effective, long-term savings, and the cost, the panels are now 85% cheaper than they were when I started putting panels up in 2010, actually in the 1990s when we did our first solar hot water installation. And you can check that out. Now, a solar farm, this is a thing that I think we really need to talk about. And a solar farm in an energy precinct on the Monroe peatland, the most degraded part that you can't build on, and it's underwater half the time. The amount of kilowatts you could produce from that, and you can farm underneath it, it's phenomenal. Now, all you need to do, well, we missed an opportunity. You know, the fast tracking, there was a wonderful opportunity where we could have applied to the fast track fund to have a project put on the Monroe peatland, just like Carbonton just did. This lodged one, and Harmony Energy Farm in Opunake, and Rongariri, and Tauhe. And these are places that are putting in these solar farms. And then they're microgridding all the energy and they're putting it back into the city locally. Our energy comes from the South Island, 50% is lost under the Cook Strait. So also a conservation precinct. So I want you to be inspired, and I want you, along with fixing our existing old business as usual, looking in the rearview mirror infrastructure, start working on some of this. Start figuring out, put your heads together, because it'd be much better to be water independent and energy independent in this city.
Okay, you'll have to sum up.
And the CAT policy I've mentioned to you before. Thank you for indulging me.
Thank you. One question, Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Wish. Mary Beth, for the record, I also
Senora Taylor to you.
I also supported the rates increases higher. This is for your fourth point. But my question is, you state in your submission about council paying for leaks on private property, but wouldn't that be, yeah?
You what?
Yeah, in your
Well,
submission. it
no,
says,
leaks on private property.
identify, fix and pay for leaks on private property, total dwelling. Is that not what you mean by that?
No,
Oh, okay.
no.
That's under your proactive water resource management.
But I do want to tell you that when you flush your loos here, this is just like a reticulated water. This is only 6 liters. You're putting about 9 down there. This was $4, so $6 worth of water every time you flush. And how many times you go to the loo, Dylan, every day? I don't know.
Don't think people need to.
Well, with older people, it's a lot more, you know? So if I'm looking at, this was $4, so I'm looking at $6. I go to the loo, 8 times maybe, because at nighttime, you know how it is at nighttime, you know how it is. So that's 8 6s. That's almost $50 of just me flushing, right? And this stuff is going down. This is our best water is going down. We have stormwater. We have free water. This water, I'm going to devote to a person who is a wise water woman. And I'm donating this to Heather, okay, because she knows how to manage her water, and I want to support her in that. So any other questions?
Other questions? No, thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Be inspired, you guys, come on.
And now we now move to with a 447, Tony, check. Tony? Yeah, 447, which is on a
Good afternoon. I think I have a PowerPoint as well. And how do I manage it for this? Just press the arrow. Okay. So I'm not a natural presenter, but I'm hoping to add something to the debate.
3 2 2.
Oh. Okay. Sorry, okay, so the only thing I wanted to add directly about the rates was the first point And I think you should limit it to the 10% and find ways to work within your budget after that. I know you've had lots of people talking to you with ideas. I want to concentrate on sustainability. So the one big point I would ask for is that we keep the sustainability stimulus grant because it works. And also that we introduce a CAT policy. Most of my time, volunteer time these days is spent with Pest-Free Upper Hutt or Forest and Bird. So I've got a bit of expertise in that area now. But not so much expertise in operating. There we go. So I can read through this, or you can read it yourselves as I go. But what I want to do is get value for money and make sure that we are getting sustainability initiatives that have demonstrated success. Because you get a lot of wishy-washy stuff too. But in my experience, where Pest-Free Upper Hutt or Forest and Bird have received grants, then we've made a big difference. And a big example that you can see every day driving down the river road is the changes to the escarpment area where the old man's beard has been removed. And due to a funding grant, the possums and rats and stoats are pretty much under control too. So that only stays fixed if you keep an annual maintenance, maybe a couple of days a year, to make sure the old man's beard doesn't come back, or that the possums don't come back from over the hill or something. So a small grant can achieve a lot. There's a picture of how it used to be in 2018. You see the happy crew there removing the old man's beard. We want to keep that under control. So the red line marks the amount of escarpment that has been cleared from Keith George and Silverstream Bridge right up to Toter Park. But there are other pest plants as well, because we deal with pest plants as well as pest animals. Okay. I was sent a remarkable and encouraging outcome from the recent Science magazine last week, and the guts of the research paper was that conservation is an investment rather than an expense, and all the fancy figures are in there, but it shows that somewhere over half the world's GDP of almost 44 trillion US dollars is moderately or highly dependent on nature. So support the positive impact of conservation action. At Pest-Free Upper Hutt, this is what we're trying to do. We want Upper Hutt to be a place where our native wildlife and bush can thrive, and which is free from pest plants and pest animals. Don Merton spent a lot of time in Upper Hutt. He worked for Doc, and he has some great quotes. Rare birds can't wait for the economy to pick up. So you can't always put things off. The good news. Recently we heard from the Rimataka Conservation Trust, who do sound recordings over in Wainuiomata, that the kiwis have been heard right up on the ridge overlooking Whitemouth Valley. So last weekend, Pest-Free and some local residents went out hanging up acoustic sound recorders. We put a dozen of them between Pinehaven and Whitemouth Valley. And next weekend we collect them, and we're hoping to get some sort of feedback on where the kiwi are, if they have made it further afield here. I suspect they're going to be on the ridge over on the Wairarapa side, heading up towards Pakuratahi. And Pakuratahi, we've also received this week, news that the short-tailed bats have been heard there, which is a huge thing. They're critically endangered. Now, something they have in common is that they are very susceptible to pests, including not only feral cats, but domestic cats. We need a cat policy. We need to have responsible cat owners, which is good for the cats and good for the animals and good for the environment. We have a responsibility as a community to help protect our endangered species. So there we are. All the black dots are where the kiwi have been heard. The furthest up the top of the picture is the ridge in Whiteman's Valley. We started off with 26 kiwi. They've got 200 plus over in Devon Tiger Conservation Trust area now. So this is what we want: a cat policy. Register the cats, desex them, restrict hopefully to 2 per household, keep them home at night. I see cats on my cameras all the time. First up, I saw a moorcock sitting on a branch. Next, I saw the cats underneath looking up at it. We don't want that. Cats need to be home at night. And a cat policy is probably going to be largely self-funding. You know, we do that with dogs. The recommendation from the Environment Select Committee is that we have a similar policy to what we have for dogs already. And we already have pest control officers in place. Shouldn't be too hard. Lower Hutt have come up with a sort of framework that we can use, I believe. And it's supported by SPCA, Predator Free New Zealand Trust, the New Zealand Vets, Forest and Bird, DOC, Companion Animals of New Zealand. So we don't want that. Cats, bats tend to feed on the ground. It's what they've always done, and they're even more susceptible to cats. Yeah. Okay.
Any questions, Tony? Councillor Slow?
So I've got a couple, if that's all right. Tony, does Greater Wellington Regional Council offer any sort of grant funding for the work that you're doing with, under Forest and Bird?
Greater Wellington and DOC are really strapped for cash, and there's a lot of trapping that should be going on that hasn't been going on. For example, Tunnel Gully. So Pest-Free Upper Hutt are trapping in Tunnel Gully with the support of Greater Wellington in terms of traps and lures and all the rest of it. So that's one example. I'd like to say we're down at Rakiura in March this year, doing the walk down there, and I was very disappointed at the state of their bush, which is not being trapped, but it is going to be trapped in the near future. In fact, one of our coordinators from Heratonga has taken a job down there working for the Rakiura predator-free movement, and so they will be starting to implement trapping. But when we were in there, you could see possums at night and deer at night right beside the hut, and Norway rats leaving droppings right outside. We're so much better here for the work we've done the last 5 years.
So if we give away the sustainability grant, which is where Pest-Free gets the funding for
a lot of jobs, but for the contractor that you use for the possum control along the escarpment, for example, and for the work you do at Maidstone Park.
Yeah. So if we were to get rid of that, how long would it take for the pest to come back if we were to stop that work?
Not long at all. You can see it looking at the figures. You know, as soon as you start trapping, well, even when you are trapping strongly, you still have to deal with reinvasion from other areas. It's not something you want to stop.
Okay, Councillor Carter.
If you think the Greater Wellington Regional Council and DOC are strapped for cash, what makes you think that they're not strapped for cash?
You are strapped for cash, yeah. Absolutely. But you could just come in slashing everything without any looking at what you're losing or what you were gaining from what you had. You don't want to have to come back and start all over again. I just think you want to vet the applications and make sure you're getting value for money, that people are delivering what they say they will. And I don't have experience of other people's projects, but I know in these cases, you're getting results.
One more, councillor Griffiths.
Thanks, Tony, for coming along. My question is more just around, do you catch cats? Do you catch a lot of cats?
Personally, no.
Spray trapping sort of set up.
We hear from time to time, you're placing traps outside. You can't control everything that goes into them. Domestic cats generally don't go in them because they're well fed and looked after, and of course they should be kept home at night. If our dog goes next door, you're going to have a pest control officer from the council around there giving us fines and impounding the dog. Cats should be the same. Cats can be kept in a secure home environment and still have all that camaraderie between the owners. We had a cat for years, so I'm not against it.
My question was more around the wild side, sorry, not the domestic that you're catching.
Feral cats tend to be skinny and flea-ridden and have, they're not that healthy, they're not that chunky. They can squeeze into small spaces. Even in the traps that can hardly allow a rat into them, a skinny feral kitten especially can squeeze in. And if they do, then it's generally a humane death. But it's not something, we don't go trapping for cats. If you were down like Fjordland, Westland, doing some major projects in a national park, then they would be setting secure traps for cats. But, we don't trap for cats.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next submitter is submission number 361, which is yours, Roloff. And Patricia, welcome. Lewis? Lewis?
Great.
Yep.
Thanks, Rose.
I believe they've been distributed.
Sorry?
Well,
They've been done.
You've got them?
yeah. So we've got Lewis, we've got your submission.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lou Roloff, and Patricia Gilmer is my project colleague, particularly in where this aspiration of ours might well take us in future months and ongoing years. Thank you, Your Worship, for what I've taken as an assurance that the matters I've referred to on the first page of my speaking notes are noted and that we are accommodated. But I would like, however, to just emphasise that myself and Patricia are both hearing impaired, and we hope that we will be able to handle the acoustics within this building. Ladies and gentlemen, our primary focus in this consultation exercise is to obtain Council's acknowledgement that for superannuitants and low-income households, the residential rates proposed throughout the entire term of the long-term plan are totally unaffordable. Council must recognise that working families and superannuitants who do not enjoy continuing independent income streams have funded their basic human need for shelter from either an increasing, and will have to continue to do it, from either an increasingly inadequate after-tax income or from seriously depleted lifetime savings. The return these people received for their labour did not permit them to exploit the investment opportunities which in recent decades have totally disfigured the residential property model. their abode, its maintenance, and other overheads were funded from tax-paid incomes. They did not shelter behind any form of tax-efficient ownership entity. Grey Power's motivation, therefore, is to re-establish the principles of social justice. If you people, with respect, were to pause for a moment and take your mind back to only last year, when Council responded to the previous government's report on the review of the future of local government, you might see Grey Power shares similar aspirations to yourselves. Grey Power is offering its experience elsewhere to better establish, in partnership with Council, a truly responsive community in Upper Hutt. A community where civic leadership is aligned with a community which is informed by local engagement, and under the leadership of local government is thereby empowered to ultimately influence central government, to accept financial responsibility for the infrastructure, its maintenance, renewals, and other development projects. The existing property rating system is no longer fit for purpose. Grey Power's unique character is that it operates within a conservative, self-funded budget, providing informed commentary and focused advocacy through the voluntary application of the life skills of those among its more active membership. And therefore, all I wish to do now, before responding to any questions, is to emphasise the recommendations embodied in our submission proper. Number one was that, quote, that as an accompaniment to the LTP discussion document, a pro forma indicative rates assessment for nominated residential property based on Council's proposals and the likely impact of GWRC rates be available to ratepayers on formal request. Otherwise, the bulk of them have no concept of what the long-term implications are of the direction in which we are headed. Recommendation number two, that Council confirms its proposal to continue with rating based on differentiated capital value. We feel that best may guide you to where money exists and where it does not. Recommendation number three is that Council confirm its proposal to extend the remissions and postponement policy to permit applications for remission to be considered on hardship grounds. Recommendation 4 is that Council confirm its proposal to substantially increase development levies to ensure that those projects requiring access to existing infrastructural assets, renewals, or capital projects are appropriately funded or are appropriately charged with funding such services. Clearly, superannuitants and, to a degree also, low-income families have already paid for much of what exists. And in the case of superannuitants, we don't have the payback period to actually allow us to enjoy what is possibly proposed as our contribution to someone else's welfare. We've done our bit and we would like it, please, to be recognised. And that leaves me with our last recommendation. And this is what we refer to as a possible project in collaboration with Council. And I say that beginning in year 1 and continuing through the full term of the LTP, Council might collaborate with Grey Power Upper Hutt to enhance Council's community development programs by facilitating initially an older person's network, the obvious place for us to start, and then introducing a youth network, a vital ingredient for the future, and ultimately the hardest part, to try to engage working families. And we believe that in that way, you would be with us encouraging the activation of a fully representative, responsive communities forum. I hope that in that brief address that you can see where we're coming from and more importantly, where we hope to get to. If you have any questions,
Okay.
let me try to
Any
answer.
questions for us? Councillor Newell.
Yes, thank you very much for putting forward some sensible recommendations for us. We really appreciate the practicality of it. So I've got just a couple of 1 and 5 I want to ask you about. So the where you say that you want a pro forma indicative rates assessment, on page 43 of the document, we did give an estimate, and I did come across somebody who was crying about the fear of what 20%, 19% meant. When she saw what was actually proposed for her, she was much relieved to see it. So is that what are you something recommending something more detailed than that?
Well, you of course do an awful lot of work, which is revealed in the supporting documents, etc., etc. And it is our hope that IT, information technology, has reached the point where even though it is only a better display of the implications of what you've got in the discussion documents now, it would mean so much more if simply that background material prompted the issue, I think, of a pro forma rates assessment. The rates assessment, of course, you will need to do once you've made your deliberations. We're saying that to attract attention, as you wish to do, you need really to provide a little more explicit information. And to my mind, technology should be ready to say, press the button, highlight that it is a pro forma assessment for information purposes only. And I think you'll find you've got a responsive community.
Hey, you got another question?
Yeah, well, the next one was just on the older person's network. So that's something Grey Power would be willing to lead.
I'm a relative newcomer to Upper Hutt. I spent the last 40 odd years, 30 of which have been as a Grey Power activist, if we could call it that, in Hodowhenua. And Hodowhenua does have a very well attended, I think on a 6-weekly schedule, older person's network, but it's only part of what is in effect the wellbeing committee. It functions under the aegis of Council's formal wellbeing committee. And while older people get together and participate And often they look to grey power because we are not funded and therefore reticent in terms of rocking the boat. They often accept our involvement because it comes under the general heading of well-being, and we take it perhaps to politicians, to our national organisation and so on. We're very well aware that Horowhenua City District Council enjoys a really active youth version of a similar thing. They have been doing it for many years. They modelled themselves on New Plymouth, who years ago introduced that and were renowned for it. And in that period, they have not yet managed either to attract the working population. That's going to be the big challenge for us. I obviously don't have a lot of connections in the working population, but I am familiar with all the attendant other organisations like CAB and Age Concern and so on, and I would regard it as my personal project. Having spoken and found the sort of tracks that council and grey power would proceed upon, I would take it on myself to outreach to the other organisations, and I know it would be very effective if I was accompanied by one of council's community development officers.
Okay, any other questions? No?
Just quick from me. Thank you, Lewis. I really appreciate you coming to talk today. I totally agree with you that New Zealand has a ticking time bomb in terms of as first home buyers get older, as people live longer, superannuitants are going to become more and more the rating base. What other ways do you think local government should look to fund itself other than through rates?
I think that inevitably, as I understand in, say, the United States of America, local government is substantially funded by their equivalent of our central government. You see, it is, in my opinion, in the opinion of grey power, equity in terms of revenue gathering is best pursued and delivered through income taxes, direct taxation. That's where we believe is the only possible way that you can go forward with something that governments can focus on, because they, of course, would be organising it. You see, at the moment, I'm well aware from years talking with Horowhenua District Council, etc., that there are so many different ways of individual councils at the moment, because of the political influences, I would say, within the constituency, in distributing the impact of rating in various forms. In a district council, ordinary householders and superannuitants have not fared well in that particular shuffle.
Thank you. Okay.
I'm glad that I am now in a community which is predominantly households.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Lord. Thank you very much. Thanks, Lord. Thank you. Okay, our next submitter is John Boyle, 362. John, now you can stand, John, or sit.
No, no, thank you.
362, that's on page 134.
Right, firstly, I'd like to thank everyone. I certainly don't want your job at the moment, you guys. You've got a hell of a task ahead of you. And I normally, in my previous working life, never really got involved in stuff like this, but I've been made more aware of lots of things. So I've done my own homework, and I don't just talk for the sake of talking. So it is my viewpoint, but also a lot of viewpoints that other people have talked about to me as well. So trying to take on board my own personal one, but obviously the viewpoints of people that I've talked to. basically, and you'll have to excuse me, my printer decided to die this morning, so I've used my old notes. So I'll go through the way it is and hopefully that doesn't sort of cross over. I at the moment don't want to see any feel-good projects, and you guys have peeled a lot of it back, which is great. I think we need to get back to the 3 R's, and for a better word, rates, rubbish, roading, all right? So that, and I think we've got a fantastic setup here and we've had good longevity of good progress, but I think it's time to hesitate, to pull back, to get some credit debt down, and then for us to know to move forward. We were one of the lowest debt councils for many years, a long time ago, and that's a credit to the council. I know this council's been caught between the rock and the hard place by a lot of stuff, and my understanding is that part of it is the infrastructure that is coming through for us, and that is stemmed from the government, a lot of it, correct me if I'm wrong. The good thing that I've been told, and I've confirmed it twice, is that our infrastructure is actually good. 93% of our piping underneath the ground is 80 to 100 years, it's all good stuff. 7% is fair to poor. And on that note, I'm only making an observation of history of my own work career. I think a lot of these ivory tower places, like the Wellington water side of things, correct me if I'm wrong, are too top heavy with lots of money that just don't get used for the actual product that they have. And I have talked to a couple of councillors and the mayor just briefly on, you know, whether the idea is of bringing it back in-house to a degree. You know, and I know that's possibly been looked at. I'm not saying that's the right thing to do, but I think the average person is that we have always been brought up, us baby boomers, when things get tight, we pull the reins in and we cut our cloth accordingly. All right, and I think in some respects out there is waste, which I think you guys are now aware of because of the circumstances that we're in, and now starting to do that. But I don't want that short term. I want it for a long-term cycle. When we get to the excess side or we've got a bit of spare cash, yeah, look, deal with the feel-good stuff, absolutely. I've got no problem with that. So the other thing is, which came across to me when I've been to a couple of just meetings and also talking to people, is it's all talked about in economics. This is all just straight economics. That is what it's all about. It sort of doesn't take into account the human factor. And I'm sorry, that is correct. Some people wanted higher interest rates or higher rates to be put on there. Well, like the previous gentleman said before, you've got people with the fixed incomes now, have worked hard all their lives and they want to enjoy it. But in fact, and something like this with what the whole inflationary process doing at the moment is basically killing people. And I think physically killing people with stress. And I think you're going to see a lot more of it if we go down on this process that we've got here now. So that's where I'm at with that side. One consolation, and I hopefully you keep it in mind once again, speaking to the mayor a few years ago, I know and appreciate that we really fought to keep our own individuality. I don't want to get in the long-term things sucked into Wellington and we're paying for their debt. So I appreciate we've got debt to pay for, Seaview and all that sort of stuff going through there. So I think you guys are obviously in a process of correcting some stuff, and that's great. Once again, we've got a fantastic place to live here, and overall things have run well. We've just had a big rock, and it's a perfect financial storm at the moment with everything, inflation, the whole side of things. My big concern, which I've just woken up to because I'm at the wrong end, I am paying huge rates. All right, and I did some work. I got some OIA information from you guys getting average rates per household in the 16,000 plus households on the rural lifestyle. We just seem to have got hammered every way we looked for some reason because our land increased exponentially quite a bit. There was a new thing came in and we got dealt to. So I've already paid 20% for last year and this year, but that's 20% on a much higher rate than the average person. All right, so it's actually, I'm paying as an individual and other people in my position, we are not paying for the proportionally in fairness. of services, like we pay 2 to 3 times the amount, all right? And a lot of them are still just worked hard, they're starting to retire, want to enjoy their lifestyle, are on fixed income with some sort of super coming in and other things, but they're not keeping up with inflation, and that's a fact. To give you some idea, and what I did, I looked at all the households, I just wanted, my feeling is, and I know we can't do it at the moment, but this is a start point, that every household pays the same rates, because we get the same thing. Now, there's an argument which this gentleman's put on there at the lower end, it's unfair, but equally it's unfair at the top end because they're not exponentially. I know people have only get to their second house are on $200,000-300,000 a year, and that's true. I knew that purely from my previous work, which was in the real estate side. So I know that's there. So there's a balancing act. The big thing I keep coming back is to fairness. You guys provide a service for us, and that's fantastic, and overall it works well. But why should people like us who've worked equally as hard to try and put ourselves in a better position, all of a sudden get dealt to? We've been dealt to for whatever 37% over the threshold of our land value. We got dealt by from the 5.8 to the 20%, which is just, I think, morally wrong. And at the end, I don't get 2 or 3 times the benefit that someone else is down at the end. On the sliding scale, I did my calculations, and I'm happy to talk to people on that side of things. With the bulk of them being properties, so I took the medium average rates, which I got from the council. It's all information from the council. And if you look at it like that, that's the bulk. We're at the top end, and there's others here down the bottom. So if you bring it all up and all back, the increase of the average medium thing is like about $50 a year, 50 to 100. 100 is extreme. I've exaggerated that. And to give you an idea of my rates from today, we will have increased our rates within 5 years, 100%. And I've gone through just on your predictions here, I've used the rates increase limit. By 2033, our property will be paying nearly $14,000 in rates. And that's not the regional council rates, which I know is not here, but it's part of the thing. With the regional council, 17,500 to 18,000. I had to calculate that, but they seem to follow your increases or vice versa, you know, so, and there's a pattern there. Where the average person on the 2,800 average rate pays 8,200 to my 14,000 and 6,700 to my 11,300. So once again, it's a lot to take on here. I'm happy to talk to someone in further detail, but it's the fairness and the equity. I know the law states we can't do this at the moment, but it's a start point. And like everything, things can change. You know, just because it's been what it is, it doesn't have to stay that way. And this gentleman made the point too. It's not fit for purpose now, the rating system, because that fairness of equity, I'm not using. In fact, most rural people are not using much in the township at all, but we seem to be getting dealt to with huge figs on the assumption that our land value, which we haven't created, we bought our land 15, 20 years ago, it's a little bit more expensive then than the average property, but it wasn't that great. I can't control the increase of properties. So that's it. It's just the bottom line, one word, fairness is what I'm looking for on that. And I appreciate that there's a way to go on that. So, yep. Any questions?
Questions?
Can I just clarify, so you're in the rating differential, which we've removed around the rural under 30 hectare?
Yeah, yes, I'm 5.2, 5.4 hectares.
Right, so that's the one that comes up to the general.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you, John.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We now move to the next, Wendy Lark. Is Wendy here? No. Okay, Graham Montez and Hagoon Crothers. Afternoon. That's what number is 479?
It's juice.
Just finding the page, Graham, won't be enough. What page?
I've got here submissions that were made last night. Do you have them scanned in on your computers? Please.
Just trying to find the page.
131, I think.
131 for page number in the agenda. 131
Yep.
is the page number in the agenda.
Okay.
From what you're being given, I'd like to start at page 3 of that, please.
Okay, right, yep.
Once people have got something. I'd like to start on page 3. Before I do, I'd like to say that the LTP booklet that you produced and sent out, while it may have met the legal requirements, failed to provide to all ratepayers a full, transparent process. It gave insufficient information for people to actually make any informed decision. I have previously been an accountant and I have struggled to make any sense out of some of your figures, particularly when it comes to comparing the downloadable files against the booklet. They don't add up. I sent to the council last week in regards to the financial statements, a deficit that showed, and it is there if you add it up, of 144.5 million over 10 years. There needs to be some accountability for the lack of information, for the incorrect information that's been provided. I'd like to speak to rates postponement policy. Under the policy, the Hut Council should not, or other Hut Council should not incur further hardship or costs to anyone making an application. By asking people to get statutory declarations and other requirements, it will cause further hardship. Rates rebate is only aimed at those on extremely low income. As a superannuitant, I got an increase of 4% this year. I think it was 4.66, I correct that. Stats have revealed, or the statistics for the end of March, the CPI was 4%. That you are proposing 20% rates increase, or 19.93, 20% is just putting people like myself reliant upon super, because I have not worked since 2003 because of ill health. It's putting us into hardship further. And I've got some points to add to your hardship criterion of 6.1.2. Firstly, it says nothing about anybody on a fixed income. Nothing at all. It does not address, sorry. I submit that you add a clause to your hardship criteria to include something about fixed income people. Not a big thing. It's only aimed at mainly those who are working and have lost their jobs. So current people in the current workforce. Ways to increase revenue. I think Upper Hutt City Council needs to look at who it has given rates revisions to in the last 14 years.
since 2010. The failure to levy rates on profitable businesses shows a bias towards the business, and it does not align itself with your policy of fairness for all. Blue Mountains campus was given a rates remission in June of last year. Lane Street Studios was given a 5-year remission in November of last year, when you knew what the financial position was like. You knew that all these costs were coming up, perhaps not to the extent of them, but you knew that there were big costs coming. NZCIS, from my understanding of what the council has on its site, they're very limited, if any, rates levied there. Maidstone Business Hub, it's a sporting field, but it's run as a business. That needs to pay its way too. Defence Link. I'm aware what the LGA says, that the council can only levy rates based on land value for defence land. That land value has to be realistic. According to the website in your plan documents, shows the rates. There's a valuation number there, I've quoted the number. It's an area of 1,558,803 square metres, and has a land value of $275,000. No water charge, no pan charge, nothing. Surely, you can't tell me that the guys that go down there, hold on all that time that they're there and go and do their business elsewhere. They have to have a pan charge, a water charge. They get water. Why aren't they paying for it? Another property of 61,000 square metres has a land value of 590,000. My property, which is 550 square metres, has a land value of 465,000. Where's the equity in that? It's not there. It's time that you re-looked at this to make sure that you are recovering what is entitled to you as a council. There are other properties that are bound to be under your rates revision process or policy that you need to recover monies from. And I would suggest that the council look at that and see what's going on. I've added something at the back of this. Does UHCC really want public submissions? The booklet says on page 21, UHCC intends to no longer fund eyesight at expressions. But I understand some of the staff have already been given notice. It was discussed in your meeting last week as well. Surely that's a little bit ahead of time because you hadn't even received submissions. So did you really want submissions? If you've made a decision already before any submissions were heard or before they were even closed. Page 46 of the booklet says, we'll revoke policies supporting grants that are not included in our preferred option, as they will no longer be required. This again shows the council is not willing to listen to any submissions and has made decisions before you've opened up this process. These booklets would have taken some weeks to prepare. They didn't just happen overnight. And it was well before you even opened the submissions that these were done. I believe that the financial mismanagement over the past few years of this council has put you in a position where you need a large increase to get yourself out of the situation that you're in. It's time the council stop funding vanity projects and concentrates on core business. Development of subdivisions, 27,000 as a cost. Surely that could be increased. Similar to, say, what Hutt City are doing. I think theirs is around 47,000 or 46,000. There are ways that you can look at to increase costs. I submit to you that this whole consultation process be scrapped and start again in a different format with a different team and a lot more transparency in the documents provided. I refer to the financial statements policy which I looked at. When I looked there, there was a discrepancy, it seemed to me. This is on page 36, 37 of the financials file. That's the downloadable file. It lists what are called rating, what they call them? Sorry, rate funding requirements. It lists leadership in the 2024-25 year. This is page 2 of my document. As being 2037. I thought this, because it was so far out compared to figures on both sides of the graph, would be an error. It should have been about 5 million. I said 2,000, I apologise, it was 2 million. But when I queried it from the council, the response that I got was, and I've attached the email to the back of this so you can actually read it for yourself, that it was because of savings that the CEO had requested the council make. Well, hang on. If they were able to reduce their costs by 5 million in 1 year, surely the rest of the years they can reduce their costs by a similar amount. It's not feasible to go and look at costs and see that you can't reduce them in year 2 or year 3 of the long-term plan. I'm sorry, if people are looking for that, it's actually page 36 and 37 of the financial statements file. The other thing was the reserves project that you've, sorry?
Time's up, we need to.
All right, any questions?
Yeah. Any questions for that? No questions, thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
And now move to submission 538. This is John O'Malley. John, welcome. That's on page. You can, yeah, do you want to stand or sit if you like, John, whatever you like?
Sorry?
You can stand or sit if you like.
I prefer to sit quite frankly, because I can only see with one eye.
Yep, no, you sit.
Blind to one eye, and the other one has to work overtime, right? So I'd appreciate it. It's a focal length, you know. Thank you very much.
145. 145. Thanks, John.
Hello, Mayor and Council. Thank you very much for the opportunity to come to this issue again. As usual, the devil always lies in the detail and trying to make an intelligent comment on this. So I'll try to take a different approach to one experience and that I can perhaps offer. let's see how I go. And I've got some specific items here, and I'll speak generally on interest and finance, which is my specialty. First of all, community development. I put yes to reducing activity and stop offering community grants. The intention here was cost reduction. On reflection, the question is who are such grants going? How big are the individual communities they're supporting? You want to ensure they get the biggest bang for your buck. And it's easy to shut down a community, but incredibly difficult to start it up again when the economic situation improves. I could not find a detailed process that gave me confidence in the fact it focused on specific community outcomes benefiting the city rather than just a lolly scramble for nice things among small hobby groups. So I request you to be very tight in your choices on the value being added by making such grants. Sometimes these things get set up, they drift on for years, and really, quite frankly, the original intention they had is gone. So that's why I put a yes to a reduction, but I'm not trying to wipe everything out, okay? It's not what I want, okay? Next, the issue of water services. My neighbour had the Taby leak, didn't they? And so they came along with an excavator and 2 trucks and 10 guys. Whoopee. I understand that Wellington Water leaves much to be desired in delivering value for services rendered. Whether it's a project to be done in the belief that our own local contractors in the city can perform a given task that is cheaper than what Wellington Water can do for, then we should engage our own local contractors. I understand Wellington Water is a very expensive contractor and the cost savings envisaged by using them has failed to materialise. Irrespective of whatever relationship you have with Wellington Water, you must drive cost of service down. And if that means for giving some work to Wellington Water because they're too expensive, then simply walk away from them and use your own people, get your costs down, you get better service, and we keep the money in our community, okay? Fulton Hogan is an expensive outfit, and then Wellington Water adds the overhead on it, first for handing a piece of paper and sending you the bill and say, pay. Okay, this is a nonsense, it's got to stop. You've got to have the courage to shaft it. Finish it, okay? Don't muck around. As for the government requirement for Three Waters proposal, you note in the plan that it's not known how much it will cost. But if your assets management plan, and this is where I would love to see a capital asset management program, what it looks like, it's been years of doing them. But if your asset management plan gives a ranking on current state of the water network and a ranking of priority renewals of the system, you can calculate what an indicative cost of replacement is going to probably be in today's dollars. This you should have done in the plan, face the issue, quantify as best as you can, and by doing an assessment of potential disruption of such work to the functionality of the city. That's good planning by my experience of life, okay? It also begs the questions where the money of that's going to come from. I'll deal with that later, okay? Economic development. This should be applied only to new enterprises joining the city, not existing businesses. Any requests for grants under this category from the mall owners should be rejected. I don't see them adding much to town. They seem to be screwing everybody. Okay, next item. The affordability for rate payments in the city residents. You should have, from my view, and from Stats New Zealand, a census map of income distribution across the city and a measure of household disposable income. We give all that on the stats forms we fill out when we do a census. There's no evidence that council understands the issue of affordability of the households in the city. I refer to section C of the plan strategies and financials document. There's no mention of the community disposable income by suburb, the ability of citizens to pay the proposed rate increases. It's a serious omission, and by my standards, it's inept financial management. To assume that a community can pay 20% increase for the next 3 years is a vicious assault on young persons starting out in life and older pensions of limited means. To reduce the impact of such a hefty increase, smoothing out of rate increases should be investigated. You must do an income distributed map now as not only to understand your community better, but as a defence against the government onslaught of opposing your huge costs of renewed Three Waters, which is coming up. The capital management plan should be identifying those items that are urgent and need to be completed in the short term, and the remaining items you push out to future years. Drive your capital placement down, drive the loan down, drive the interest down. You've got to get into hard cost cutting. All right, okay. Only those items that meet the urgent criteria should be done with the next 3 years. It's imperative to reduce borrowing costs and a cost saving measure on operational interest costs. Consequently, the whole lot's interlinked, key, lean and mean. Okay, you haven't got the cash. And here's the real sticky one. In my submission 2 years ago in the annual plan, that provided 50 million for the H2O. I drew your attention to the fact you'd only budgeted for 2% interest costs. I warned you, and so did the Reserve Bank, it was going to go to 5. Somehow my warnings and the Reserve Bank fell on deaf ears because you didn't make provision for it. Now you've got a headache. It subsequently appears my advice was not heeded. Today, I believe local government agency rate is 5.61%. The problem with borrowing of this nature, it appears you're not able to control the interest rate changing, correct? You sit there as a taker. What they throw at you, you take the hit. Well, that's the worst form of borrowing you can have, quite frankly, particularly. Okay. As a golden rule, it's not prudent to perform capital works in a rising interest rate. So as then to assess affordability when it plateaus. So in other words, with interest rate rising, don't invest in capital. So you know where you are, but you didn't do that. The OCR rate will stay where it is for the next 2 years. So we're in for the current interest rates at least, simply because the inflation factor we're going. So finally, here's the Three Waters and the Auckland financing solution, which I'd like to put it to you, is not for Upper Hutt. And this relates to your inability in the plan to do an assessment of what your Three Waters is likely to cost, which I don't accept. I think you should have actually had a go at it. Here's the rule, borrowing rule. The bigger the asset value created, the better the security. The stronger the business cash flow, what comes in, you can pay your bills, okay, gives a lower risk. And the lower the risk means there's less fault of you defaulting, which results in a higher credit rating, which results in lower interest rates. Got it? That's the name of the game, okay? If you don't play that game, you get stuck. Simple as that. So let's look what's proposed for Auckland City claim and see how it might apply to us. That is, the rates will only rise by 7%, they say. This is heavily dependent on the interest rates charged and the amount of money being borrowed on the open market. Remember, they're going out into the real world of tough finance. So not having this caged little world that you've got now, the local authority funding agency for borrowing, which is designed to protect you against creditors coming and seizing assets for the repayment of debt. The moment you go out of that, you're in the real world, okay? In my view, for Auckland, their starting interest rate will be 5.5, the current OCR, 2% being added because the government's refusing to guarantee them on anything. Currently, you've got government guarantee when you borrow from the agency, okay? So it's up to 7.5 straight away. The best credit rating they're hoping for is Standard & Poor's BBB. The government's AA. Not as sure they're going to get that. So at 2% for low credit rating, given that Auckland City sold airport shares, the family silver, to pay for operational costs is evidence of overspending and underfunding. And you only get away with that once. Cash flow, poor cash flow on loans and financing arrangements of this nature puts you into a high risk category. So the higher the risk, the higher the interest rate. And for every B rating or BBB down to 2B or 1B, add another 2%. So their interest rate will be somewhere between 9.5% and 11%. There's my reason. There's my logic. This organisation cannot get caught up in a loan situation of that nature. You can't pay what you've got now. That's really going to hammer people if you get caught up in that. So I sounded to you as a warning. Please don't dive into it. The other point is any breach of the loan terms and conditions result in a council's water assets being seized and privatised for loan repayment. Look at the UK. Look what happened when they privatised the water there. People really got stung. We could well do without that. Thank you very much. What have we got down here? An alternative solution. I know you're looking at a lot, but anyway, I haven't come here to be negative. I come to say we just got to face the situation. Is we do need to devise our own plan for water network renewal, focusing on the largest leaks, and live with any restrictions that occur as you gradually improve the water network, okay? Diving off for big bang solutions will give you big bang pain, all right? Now, I've told it to you. As a chartered accountant, giving me best advice. I hope you take it on board, okay? There you are.
Thank you, John. Any questions? Councillor McCarthy.
John, how do you propose to avoid the Seaview treatment plant upgrade costs that are being faced in the next 10 years?
Sorry, the
Seaview treatment plant, wastewater treatment plant costs that we are a price taker for in the next 10 years.
this is being done by the regional council, correct?
Hutt City Council.
Hutt City Council does it. And we're a sharing partner with them, are we?
The largest increase in our water
The largest increase in it.
in the program for the next 10 years.
Well, I think, this is the problem. The problem you've got, the problem is you've got a government that doesn't want to guarantee local authorities. The moment they do that, the interest rate comes down because the security increases. All they've got to do is tick the box and manage it properly.
Right. Well,
You need to challenge them politically, and this is where you're getting into the field, okay? Auckland's going to suffer pain about it. There used to be a day where you could issue your own bonds once on a bond market. Maybe that's an option. You've got to find different means of financing that rather than the open market. Whether the government will let you do that, I don't know. But there was a time local authorities issued their own bonds and secured against their own assets on the local market. It's a tough one. I appreciate that, but going out onto the private market is going to be quite a vicious process. The government has to come to the benefit of its citizens by funding essential health issue, which this is. It's not nice to have. It's a fundamental health issue, and assist through guarantee measures lowering the interest rate. That's the key here. You've got to get up and have these guys on politically. Simeon Brown turned around and said, he said, was it Auckland City's cost of its renewals will be lower than the other party's previous scheme of the last government, but he didn't produce a single financial model, a single thing I could look at. He didn't say what his assumptions were. He came to the conclusion. Now, I can remember that kind of statement coming up with the electricity system. We're going to reform the system. Your charges are going to go down. Really? They've gone up consistently since they reformed the system. So we're into rhetoric, and they need to be called out into specifics. And this will be done in a public forum. Now, I'm not too sure the best forum for that, but if you and the Lower Hutt can team up, then the bigger you are as an organisation in calling for that. Where's Wellington City fit in this? It's just us and the Hutt, no one else.
Did you not read, did you not read the article on page 3 of the post on Saturday, which Mayor Campbell Barry said that if we have this great CCO, our rates will be a lot lower for water.
Well, I just his calculations and his model for it. Thank you very much. I'm sick of hearing political statements not substantiated by figures. I'm a figures man and a details man, okay? But put your sums on the table and I'd like to analyse.
Councillor Wheeler.
John, you talked about in the submission that you would stop community grants, but you talked about lessening community grants.
Well, it's how you fill in this dreaded form, which I've got a comment for here in a minute anyway. It's a question is there sort of yes or no scenario of the question. It's the nature of the question you ask, so I can't turn around and say, what I was trying to say on this one, I'm sort of conditioning the no. I'm not saying you want the whole lot off the table. What I am saying is who in the community is getting it and what evidence have you got the community is better off because of it? And I don't know how you assess that.
So do you think that might be a criteria or a...
Well, I think you need to define a criteria of what these grants are aimed to do that people are unable to do on their own account. Okay? So what are they doing for themselves first? And why do they need assistance in the year? And how is the greater number or the greater community going to benefit from it? Rather than some small lobby group that's been going for years and quite frankly can survive well without it. Does that sort of work? Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Can I just, Mr. Mayor, not wishing to be a grizzle guts, but I have lodged a second submission for asking for hearing on May the 21st, okay? I was horrified to see this is how you lot get this given to you. I assume this is what I get in the mail, is what you get in front of you. Where I wrote a letter and I paragraphed things. And so you could read it with ease. You could read this thing in 2 minutes and grasp it easily. I had hope to be given to you. Instead of that, I get this. This is totally unintelligible. It's nuts. I feel sorry for you. What they're trying to do, kill you off. So what I've done, the submission has been lodged. It's in the system. Where are they? Here they are. There's someone here.
Yeah, we hand it around to us.
Could you please give one copy, please, to each of the people here? It is one piece of paper and there's both sides and that's it. You'll read it in 2 minutes. So when you come along and this, we meet again on May the 21st, you got a heads up of what I'm all about, okay? All right. Thank you for your time, much appreciated.
We now move to submitter 535, Mr. Daniel Mitchell. No? Daniel? Daniel Mitchell? Yeah, now you can either stand, Daniel, there, or you can sit down, whatever you want to do.
I'll take a seat.
Yeah, no problem. Welcome. Now, your submission is number 535. It's on page. What is it?
188.
188. Right, Daniel. There you go. Right, good to go. Yep.
Hello, not that I should have to, I think worth prefacing this that I am a homeowner that pays rates directly and is happy to pay more rates too, so before anyone says you're not a rate payer, so what to do. So I guess going through the long-term plan, some of the key points I want to highlight from my submission is that I agree in principle with achieving a balanced budget. But I'd encourage us to look at balancing it over a longer term. I think at the moment it's 5 years, which means a pretty hefty rate increase up front, which is pretty tough with everything else happening for everyone else. In addition, following that, I agree with funding depreciation as well. I mean, the fact that we haven't funded depreciation is why we're having so many problems now. So you've got to draw a line somewhere, might as well be now. Although on that basis too, since we haven't really funded it to date, I don't think we need to start by whacking 100% straight away, but that could probably be gradually working towards 100% by the end of the 10 years. Why not fund 10% next year, then 20 the following and so forth. So it's a bit more of a gradual increase and not so harmful for all of the other things going on. I agree again that revenue really does need to increase at least at the rate of inflation so that we can maintain services over the long term. But then, sorry, what's my wording? But what I'd be keen to see from council as well is looking at other ways of increasing revenue, because it doesn't need to be just from rates, and that's kind of what the problem is as well. If we were to diversify where we bring in that money, then that would reduce the impact on the people that live in homes. Like, for example, that could be looking at things like why not charge for cars on the city centre, or why not have usage charging for water or for other things like that, or even land leases for the commercial buildings that council owns and operates. Wouldn't be supportive of asset sales necessarily, but why not long-term leases and have a developer come on for 100 years, build something profitable, and then council reclaims that at the end. I've just never seen any sort of thought into things like that, and that was quite disappointing. I want to see as well council looking at reducing the cost of things, not just by arbitrarily cutting social services that it delivers, but by looking at things like effective city planning. So that includes like transit-oriented design, mixed-use residential sort of zonings. We want to be sort of promoting intensity, not urban sprawl, because the key costs of council are water infrastructure and transport infrastructure. And if we keep building out and then effectively subsidising developers by offering them cheapies to go and build out in the middle of nowhere and then pass us the buck for the long-term maintenance costs, then I mean, again, that's why we're in the state we are now. So I'm very keen to look at ideas of how we can better incentivise intense developments near your transport hubs, near your city hubs, and disincentivise, I guess, urban sprawl, really. And there's ways you can do that. Having a flat rate for development contributions or for what's it called, consenting probably isn't the way. So you could look at literally that and if it is, or if it's built in the right location, you can vary it, waive fees, whatever, to promote better developments for everyone. Because I mean, really, one of the things too, with more houses being built, we should have a bigger rating pool. And we should be able to do more with that money, but we're not, because that money is actually getting spread thin, because it has to deliver more expensive services further away. I'd also encourage council to, when it thinks back to basics, remember that one of the purposes of council is to enable democratic local decision making and action by and of communities. To promote the social, economic, environmental and cultural well-being. As such, back to basics approach must also recognise social infrastructure is crucial and core to what council does. Given the poor turnout of the community in processes like this, like local elections, representation reviews, I want to see the council invest much more heavily into community engagement. I want to see establishment of community advisory panels, particularly for youth, disabled people, ethnic communities, so that they can actually be involved and we can actually create a city that works for them and for everyone as well. And I guess that's the key parts of my submission.
Any questions? Councillor Swale.
Daniel, thank you for coming along and participating in this process. So I am aware that other councils, when we talk about development contributions, I am aware that other councils actually look at different areas in their cities, in their suburbs, and have actually gone and come up with a matrix that actually they then pass on to the person. We've gone with a more broader application here. Is that something that maybe we should look at to make sure that the cost is fairly represented?
I think so.
The other question I have, that's all, sorry, Daniel. So when I look at your submission, which is quite comprehensive and you've got some really good ideas in there. So when we look at the best bang for buck, John O'Malley said that when we were looking at putting a criteria around our grants funding, maybe that would be a better way to go and be quite specific then as to who we
actually, can I add to that then? I think council doesn't necessarily need to do that with community things, but with its own investments. I mean, I look at some of the roading developments that are being proposed, and is it putting that social return on investment sort of lens into that? I highly doubt it, based on what I've been seeing proposed. The council's really seeing the cost of things, but not the value of things. So I'd encourage it to change its perspective, because I mean, the cost of a lot of the projects it's proposing won't necessarily have as much value as the Citizens Advice Bureau or your other community things that the community actually values. So I think
to put that social lens over.
Yeah, definitely, and not just on the things that the council decides to fund that council doesn't deliver, but on the things council's actually doing itself. I don't see that happening. I also need that to happen to the things that the council enables. So not just the things it funds, but the decisions it make that will enable other people to fund sort of projects, I guess.
So in that timeline.
Any other questions, Daniel? Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Daniel. Excellent submission, great detail. Do you, the integrated transport strategy was discontinued.
Yeah.
Do you believe this work should be continued?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, ideally, things like the sustainability and transit sort of strategy and matters should be incorporated into all of the activities that the council is doing anyway. They shouldn't be seen as siloed or separate things. Council should be putting this lens into everything that it does or enable, all of its decisions, whether it's zoning and allowing things to happen there or here, or taking costs from here or there. It needs to be taking it in mind of those lens of, is this enabling better transit, better intensification, more sustainability? And that doesn't happen when you say, let's silo this strategy over there and that's being made. Brilliant. That's, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Ultra.
Thank you. What kinds of things do you think would improve community engagement?
I mean, my key one, I would really love to see the community advisory panels set up. I mean, they've got them in other councils. It's pretty easy to copy paste that across. A little bit of investment there, and then that could work towards ways of increasing engagement more broadly outside of those groups. But really, we're not getting enough voices in core council decisions. I think the long-term plan, which had about 600 submissions odd now, with a community of almost 50,000 people, and that's just the people that live here, not even the people that travel here every day, either for work or travel through it or come here on weekends. They're all very much part of the community too.
Okay, so how many submissions did we get in the end? Was it 600?
So about 1% of the people that live here. That's not not a great very many.
Okay, last question, councillor Newell.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to ask, were you aware, this is the question, that Grey Power is also suggesting an older person's network and a youth forum and a working families network?
No, it wasn't.
No, but you might be now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you.
So our next is 5:20, so we got 15 minutes. We'll adjourn for 15 minutes. Okay?